What's up, everybody? This is Neo Realness and Let's Please God, the ministry that helps you get right with God. Today we're on episode 68, and we're answering the question, are black people indigenous to America? In the midst of all this true identity of black people being the Israelites, being exposed and stuff like that, there are people who have come out and said that black people were already here. Well, they were in America, rather. They are actually the Indians, in that the white man just pulled up on a ship and just enslaved us. And then he also mentioned that some of us were taken on ships from America to other places and so forth. But the main teaching is that we were already here. So that's easily disproven. One of the biggest things they'll say, we're the slave ships. If black people came here on slave ships and they come from Africa, we're the slave ships, And I'm gonna tell you where the slave ships at. But before I do that, I want to answer the question, are black people indigenous to America? And the answer is, it is true. Prior to Columbus coming, Native Americans are considered black. They were dark-skinned and red. They were here. If we go further back, you find the Olmec heads, which I talked about in my series called The Secret of Racism, where it shows a black civilization, way back before even the Native Americans were here. If you look at the history of the Native Americans, they're actually Asians who came from Asia and to America and settled. And so anywhere you go, there's going to be black people. And when we talk about black people, we're talking about brown skinned, dark skinned, and melanated people. All right. That's the way it is. White people didn't come on until to later on. And so any area you go, the origin of the people groups there are going to be brown. They're going to be black. So, but as far as black people goes, everybody that's black is not Hebrew. And that's what we're talking about today. We're Hebrews actually here. That's what people are saying. You're not African. You're American. You're Native American. That's what they teach. All right. Get rid of that idea that you're even African. What this is designed to do is to get you off of the idea that you're actually a Hebrew. Just like we talked about in the last sermon about how pastors and religious leaders will try to get you to accept that you're just some African person, you're just a black person, but you're not Hebrew. You're not the chosen people of God, none of that stuff. All right. And this is just another attempt. I remember when I came across the information, this was after I learned that I was a Hebrew. Here come this guy his name was Kerry Davis. And I watched several videos on YouTube by him trying to explain that we were actually indigenous, that we were Native American, and that this from Africa voyage that didn't even happen. Currently, there's a guy called Dane Calloway who's saying the same thing. And then every now and then you go on Vlad TV, there's people like Lord Jamar, there's other rappers who say, well, I'm indigenous, I was already here, and XYZ. Okay. The problem with that statement is, first of all, just looking at the people groups, okay? Negro Hebrews look different from Native Americans, okay? All right? They look totally different. Native Americans have a sharper nose. They have high cheekbones. Black people or Hebrews don't look like them. Native Americans have straight hair. Black people or Negroes or Hebrews do not have straight hair. They got curly hair, okay? So why is it that you look different from them if you say you're from them and you're the same people, okay? Now, when we look into history, we know that when we were shipped over here, while we were in slavery, some of us fled. We ran to Florida where there were still Native Americans there, and we intermingled with them. And so this is where a lot of the images you'll find of young girls with straight hair, with feathers in their hair, with bow and arrows, because they have Indian or Native American, okay? And so we mixed in with them. That's with the tribes that were friendly to us. The other tribes enslaved us. So while we running from the white man, we going down to the Indians to get comfort, and they end up enslaving us. So not all the Indians or the Native Americans, I don't want to call them Indians because they're not Indians. Not all the Native Americans here were friendly to black people, but those who were, we integrated with them. And we got children and people groups that say that they're in their heritage or in their bloodline, they are Native people. And you can see by their hair and some of their features as well. I watched a few documentaries in the past about that as well. Black people waking up to their heritage being partially Native American. But Native Americans, if you deal with them, they will tell you, bitch, but you are this. You're not all the way this, okay? You are half Negro, you're Hebrew, you have that, but you're not totally Native. They'll always say that. They always make a distinction, all right? Every people group know who we are except us, all right? We also fled down to Mexico to get free, and we intermingled with the Mexicans, all right? Some of us got Mexican ancestry and different things intermingled with us, all right? So we got what they call the Afro-Mexican, all right? So we have different cultures mixed in with us, but where did we originally come from? Africa, the west side of Africa, after fleeing from Judea or Israel from the Romans in 70 AD. Okay, so we did come here. We were never here before that, all right? We came here, all right, on slave ships. I'm going to show you the records of the slave ships in a minute. So if a person want to say, well, I got Native American in my family, that's true. Growing up, we would say that about people. He got Indian in his family. They would say that because the man would have, or the boy in the school would have straight hair. But he's brown, but he got this straight hair. Or his hair is slightly straighter than everybody else's. I was accused of that at one point because the way I was brushing my hair at the time, it looked like I had Native American in my family. But from my understanding, there's no trace of that. Bottom line is, I'm not Native American, I'm Hebrew, and my ancestors came here on a slave ship. If your ancestors came here on a slave ship, you're Hebrew, all right? And we can keep going down to other cultures. We came out of Egypt. Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers, if you read the Old Testament, he married, once God favored him and made him second in command of Pharaoh over Egypt, he gave him 2 Egyptian wives. So we got Egyptian mixed in with that too. But we as a people are Hebrew, we're Israel. And even though we may intermingle with other different nations, they'll always make a distinction and say that you're Hebrew, all right? You can claim you Egyptian, you can claim you Mexican, you can claim you Native American, but you still Hebrew, all right? You still got some of that in us. But I want to make clear that we were not here before Columbus came, okay? We were brought here. So here's the deal. Why are people believing this? One of the reasons is because they're ashamed of their history. They don't want to be African because of the history of Africans. First, we're given a narrative about current Africa. There's just a ghetto. Anytime they show you pictures of Africa, there's a bunch of babies walking around with flies on their face with fat bellies, and they sick, and ain't no food. They got some white person over there trying to help them. Okay, it looks like a desolate ghetto in Africa, when that's not even true. That's a narrative that white folks bring back to America to make us think a certain way about our own homeland. It's not the case. It's very rich over there, and a lot of people are moving over there, especially white people and Asians and Chinese people and Koreans. They're going over and taking up land because they know what it's about over there. It's rich over there. But they lie to us. But we believe the lie, and we say, man, I don't even want to be African. And so when a person comes up and say, you're not African, man, you're Indian, you're Native American, we jump on that and say, yeah, I'm Cherokee, I'm this, I'm that. Hating on your own origin because you don't like the history that you come from, or you don't know all your history, because our history didn't start in slavery. If you take that narrative, you only got part of the picture. So you go back further. But that's what's happened. That's why they accept this idea, and they run around talking about they Cherokee, they this and they that. In my second church that I was a member of, the pastor, his brothers and sisters were all like mixed. They were half black and half Native, and you could see it in their face and their children, and all their hair was straight. Initially, I thought they were like rocking a perm or something, like why they got their hair like that. And he thought I was teasing him, and I said, man, your hair like that? He said, no. I said, I'm not teasing you, man. He said, well, I'm Native American, and this is my tribe that I come from, but we black and we mixed, and that's why we look like this. And so it's mixed in with us. But the bottom line is, if your father and your grandfathers and people came over here on slave ships, you were Hebrew, okay? So we do have different nations mixed in, but at the end of the day, we going by the father, as the Bible goes, and whoever your father was, that's where it links to who you are as far as your background. So they say, where the slave ships at? Well, I'll tell you where the slave ships. If you go to wikipedia.com and type in slave ships, they'll give you a list of all the ships. Basically, the ships were repurposed, all right? They built them to ship slaves, and then once they done with them, they would repurpose them and do something else with them. They weren't going to just destroy them. They weren't going to keep them for display and say, hey, here's our slave ship, just for historical records. No, these were tools they needed to use, and so they repurposed them. If you had a cruise ship and you're no longer using it for shipping people around and touring or whatever, that's a vessel that you can use for something else. So what would happen is they would sell it to somebody else, clean it out, and say, we're going to ship something else in this, or we're going to turn it into something else. That's all they did with it. And so that's where all the slave ships are. They either reused or broken down, or some of them wrecked. So let's go to Wikipedia. There's a record of that. British have records of all the ships and connected to the transatlantic slave trade. So it's not just slave ships for everybody. It was specifically for us. All right. If you just go to this article, you'll see it. Slave ships were large cargo ships specifically converted for the purpose of transporting slaves. Such ships were also known as Guinea men because their trade involved trafficking to and from the Guinea coast in West Africa. All right. And they give you a list of slave ships. I'm just go over a few of them. And what they'll do is give you a link. You click the link and they'll tell you all about the slave ship, when it was built, when it was broken down, what it was used for after it stops shipping slaves. At some point they had to abolish slavery. And so they said, oh, what happened to the ship? Well, they changed it. They did this, what they did that with it. So one is called, the ship was called a Antelope, Spanish slave ship captured near Florida in 1820 with 283 slaves aboard, leading to the Antelope case. Another ship was called Desire, the first American slave ship. This one is called the Creole, involved in the United States coastwide slave trade and the scene of a slave rebellion in 1841, leading to the Creole case. We got a ship called Jesus of Lubeck. This is what the people will bring up, and they say, look at your religion, man. They brought you here on a ship and it was named Jesus. This is real. Like, they had a ship called Jesus and they put Hebrews on it who actually had, prior to that, had Jesus killed. And it's funny how they did that. But bottom line is called Jesus of Lubeck, a 700-ton ship used on the second voyage of John Hawkins to transport 400 captured Africans in 1564. Queen Elizabeth I was his partner and rented him the vessel. Okay, let's learn more about Jesus of Lubeck. Jesus of Lubeck was a carrack built in the free city of Lubeck in the early 16th century. Around 1540, the ship, which had mostly been used for representative purposes, was acquired by Henry, I think that's the 5th, 6, 7, 8, I think the 8th, King of England, to augment his fleet. The ship saw action during French invasion of the Isle of Wight in 1545. Let's just keep going. Let's skip down. Jesus of Lubeck became involved in the Atlantic slave trade under John Hawkins, who organized 4 voyages to West Africa and the West Indies between 1562 and 1568. During the last voyage, Jesus, along with several other English ships, encountered a Spanish fleet of San Juan de Ulloa, modern-day Veracruz, Mexico, in September 1568. In the resulting battle, Jesus was captured by Spanish forces. The heavily damaged ship was later sold for 601 ducats to a local merchant. See, they give you each history of those ships. So where the ships at, they got sold, they got repurposed, they got broken down, they got destroyed in battle. They got remixed and made into something else. That's what happened to them. So this idea, there ain't no slave ships, so y'all all just was already here, is complete BS. All right. But what it does do, it gives black people confusion, and it makes them believe that they're not Hebrew, they don't know who they are, and they just indigenous. And even for those who don't want to accept that they're Hebrew, they're walking around and hear this information and not grounded in their history, they'll accept this and say, well, I'm not African, I'm native. And then what? What you gonna do now? So I just wanted to go over a few of these things with you to show you that, you know, the slave ships existed. We were shipped here. We were not already here. God said this would happen to us. It's part of the curses. And you don't be fooled by this Dane Calloway cat or this other guy named Kerry Davis. But there's truth to their statements. Yeah, you may have some Indians or Native Americans in your background. You may have that. So that's fine. We intermingled when we fled. We fled to Florida, intermingled with the natives. We fled to Mexico, intermingled with the Mexicans. But they'll always say you're an Afro-Mexican. They always say that you have Native American. You're not all the way Cherokee. Just like those guys that I was a member of the church with. They knew that. They just identified as black because they understood. Yeah, we got that in our background, but the fact of the matter is we Hebrew. They didn't say they were Hebrew, but they were saying that they were black. So don't be fooled by this. This is just another way of getting you off course. Just like we talked about the pastors trying to tell you that you're not. You just need to go to sleep and don't worry about your origin and stuff like that. This is just another deception from the enemy to keep you asleep and to be off in another course. Now you got a teepee in your backyard and you got feathers in your head. You ain't no Native American. It's disrespectful even to the people that are Native American. It's like you trying to take somebody else's culture. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not you. Let them have that. They're Native American. Let them have that. You hold on to your African ancestry and you hold on to who you really are, which is a Hebrew. All right? Just leave it at that. And I tried to watch Dan Kellaway's videos, and it's hard to watch because, and then he's got this dramatic music going on, and he's telling you that history was taught to you in reverse. If you do critical thinking, you'll realize this guy's making stuff up. This ain't true. They say the slave ships have been depurposed. They've been repurposed rather, or broken down. That's all. These were tools. Nobody's going to keep one and say, this is a slave ship of X, Y, and Z. We're going to keep it on display just for history purposes. They didn't want to keep that around. You know, they're ashamed of their past to the point that now they want to say that black people were immigrants. They want to say that Hebrews were immigrants now. They want to hide slavery now. They want to teach in the textbooks that Hebrews were immigrants. They weren't even slaves. They weren't forcibly removed from their homes and brought over here to work for free. You know what I'm saying? Come on. You know, this ain't, and the thing is, they say, white man be lying. Yeah, he be lying, but he ain't lying about this. He didn't lie about the slave ships. He wants you to know, he wants you to think that that's all that your heritage is, that you just a slave. So that's why he constantly throws that at you, but he will never tell you what happened prior to that, who you were prior to that. You see? So I know what you're saying, you know, white people be lying. Yeah, they be lying. But they're not lying about this. Okay? This information is readily available. There's so much proof out there. It's ridiculous to even look at, but that's as far as I'm going to go with it. I think it's very clear that we're from Africa. We were shipped here on ships. And that's just the bottom line, okay? Do we have Native American heritage? Yes. Do we have Mexican heritage? Yes. Like I mentioned, Egypt. We came out of Egypt. We intermingled with them. So yeah. There's some of that in us, but we are a nation of our own, separated by God. And we are the biblical descendants of the Israelites. All right, so that's all I got to say. Till next time, walk in the Spirit. If you're not born again, listen to the gospel, read the gospel, accept it, and be blessed.